you all know Elizabeth, but I also have the opportunity to introduce Nghia and Sriya, who I know as board members with CAMACE, the California Mental Health Advocates for Children and Youth, because I've been a friend to that board for 20 years, and they are our student board members. But I see here on this agenda, not surprisingly, that Sriya is also with CYC on their youth advisory board. That's the California Coalition for Youth. And that Nghia is the founder of YouthMindsAlliance. So to no one's surprise, one of the things we've been able to watch these youth do this year is go through the college application process. Is it okay if I brag about you? No? No. So Nghia has now been accepted to Stanford, and Sriya to UCLA. So we are just desperately proud of them, and I'm so glad that you're here to be with us tonight and to share your views. And I have volunteered to be the presser of this while you're here. So, yeah, right. So it's all yours. Oh, do you want to stand here instead?
Hi, everybody. My name is Nghia Do. So just to kick off the presentation, I want to share my personal life experience and story, just to kick it off. So yeah. In a mentally ill household, nothing makes sense. In my paternal family, my grandpa, my first uncle, my second uncle, and my dad all acquired schizophrenia. Running away from spies, searching for a lost lover in Cambodia, or protecting their non-existent farms in the night becomes a part of their world. In their eyes, I'm a spy who's meant to deteriorate the family, the ultimate enemy. Growing up, the sun reflecting upon my face is enough for my dad to close the door, feasting on my vulnerability, heightening my trembling fingers. Everything turns dark. My mom decided enough is enough. We are moving to the US, leaving him in the mental hospital in Vietnam. Looking away from the trauma, I didn't feel resentful, but my eyes look forward with hope. Time flies. I forget about it one day until the first day of high school. I thought going to high school would be an unforgettable experience that I will remember for the rest of my life. The when you're sitting alone, I am next to you kind of experience. But that wasn't the case. The transition into high school welcomed me with the burning aroma of weed, flowing from the aura of its multiple MMA fist fighting before class started. Stunned, but I keep walking. Then at one point, in the exuberant hallways at a school with 1,863 students, I felt invisible. My childhood-like excitement followed the footsteps of my father into his world. I've now acquired depression. To me, school means fear. Every day when their turn bell rings, I swallow the disgusted with my life sensations back down my throat, empowering me to walk faster than anyone else to reach my home. It's where I sought comfort through the endless hours in front of the comedy shows, trying to lift the determined, stiff lip muscles to my cheeks, hoping to be happy amid the reality I'm living. When I close my eyes, all I see is the unbearable suffocation, making me breathe narrower with a blurry future ahead. It takes a committed counselor to transform me. Ms. Reese entered my life like a breath of fresh air trying to protect me from the storms outside. Her words flow like a soothing breeze that help me breathe, turning suffocation into relaxation. For the first time, I felt heard. After the adjourned bell rings, my ears look forward to hearing a spark of happiness, lit up by her soft voice as she helps me plan a future, gleaming with passion from within, the world of psychology. One time, Sriya said, "Nghia, You should take the psychology course at this nearby community college. From that point on, I never looked back. The introduction of the course sparked and fueled a never-ending passion for me in mental health. The more I understand about myself and my family's mental struggles, I'm fascinated. Slowly, TED Talks and psychology books replaced comedy shows. It didn't make me laugh, but I'm smiling, manifesting its joy into other aspects of life. At school, I open up, make new friends who I can laugh with. From now on, when I'm sitting at a table, sharing a gaze to my right, I touch eyes with a living voice. There's someone finally next to me. Every day, I enter a flow state through the 14 hours of work as I discover more about the world of psychology. Each heartbeat rushes blood into my brain, creating an unparalleled sensation of euphoria, blurring the existence of space and time. My eyes widens. My vision vibrates. My foot clenched tight. My stomach tingles. My lips shaping an O. My fingers tremble as I flip through the pages of my first psychology book. My eyes fly through the wisdoms of knowledge, transforming my thoughts one word at a time. Its message, the experiences regardless of hardship, up until this point, is meant to bring you closer to success, blows all the sadness away. All I have left is the realization in my wet, red eyes. I want to live. The thirst of hunger and knowledge transform into an obsession for self-improvement that continues every waking minute. I take lessons that I learned from my psychology courses to develop into a better person with more discipline and dedication. From that point on, I glanced into a better future with knowledge and gratitude as my new teachers, showing me how to live happily one moment at a time. Most importantly, it teaches me how to take control of my thoughts. I am now in control of the world I live in. This life-altering journey inspired me to advocate for others who are struggling mentally, including my father. I found meaning in developing into a greater version of myself with the hope of one day using my knowledge to bring back light to my once disjointed home. 1 year ago, I started a mental health organization with 4 members. Today, we have 70+ members nationwide, working to influence $4 billion worth of funding. We work with the California Children's Trust to make PT program one of the 14 billable programs that the Youth Behavioral Health Initiative can fund. The sun is now shining upon my face. I'm catching the wind with my nose, breathing with a vision stronger than me. Everything is now bright. Every day, I visualize seeing my father at my wedding. He's now healthy, standing in front of me in a nice, well-dressed suit, smiling. We touch eyes for the first time in years, sharing a deep gaze that seemed to last for hours. I feel a rush of happiness filling my eyes, falling violently down my cheeks with a deep sense of accomplishment. He reaches for my hand, walking me down the halls of fulfillment. I'm now visible. In the yellow dim streetlights, a man's eyes shine through my uncle's vision, asking if his son still lives there. Despite the disheartening response, he only heard of hope through those words. 7 years ago, he escaped the mental hospital to do just that, pursuing his last hope. That was the last time I heard from him. I know I'm changing the world with my work, and one day I'll change my father's too. This is the personal statement that I sent to Stanford University, where I'll be class of 2026 to study psychology on a full-ride scholarship and change my world of my father. Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Sriya to talk and share about her experiences.
Hi everyone, I'm Sriya. I'm a current high school senior and soon to be freshman in college next fall. Like Maureen introduced, I am the chair of the Youth Advisory Board at the California Coalition for Youth, and it's an honor to be speaking with you all today. So, as mental health professionals here in this room, I'm sure that we've all heard the statistics of youth mental health. 36% of youth aged 12 to 17 had persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness. 15% had a major depressive episode in the year that the survey was taken. 18% seriously committed or considered attempting suicide. As a youth myself, I want to describe what these statistics look day to day. I wanted to share that just 3 hours ago, I was in the room next door with Elizabeth and Nghia, and I was unable to contain the negative feelings and ideas in my head that had been building up in the past week. I'm sure other youth can relate, but when I'm describing what these statistics look like in real life, it looks like pretending to be fine. I had to put on a lot of fake smiles and laughing along with the crowd just to seem normal. And it sounds like stifled crying in the bathrooms. There's been countless times where I entered my high school's bathroom and I heard whimpering in the stall next to me, and I just can't imagine like the feelings of hopelessness you feel when you know that someone is struggling right next to you and you can't do anything about it. And it feels like being surrounded by expectations of how to act and how to feel and things that are expected of us to get done in a day, homework and paying attention in class and all of that. And it all is expected of you regardless of how you feel inside. Which is why I fell in love with the peer-to-peer model in what I do on a day-to-day basis, what Nghia and I have been working on in policy. Peer-to-peer is the one model that I know that shows, that really embraces the idea that no one understands what youth feel except for youth themselves. And peer-to-peer is obviously what we're going to talk about today, so get ready. It's a lot, but we do believe that it's such an important thing that should be in every high school across California. All youth should have access to peer-to-peer help. So just a little bit of a background before we get started. Peer-to-peer, as we define it, is a group of kids, ideally who make up about 10% of the population of the school, getting trained in crisis intervention and conflict mediation in order to serve as agents as their peers navigate their mental health. So let's get started with that.
I would like to say I was 13 years old when I decided to become a counselor, and my master's is in counseling because of remembering and knowing what that feeling is like and carrying that with me. One more? So it's on building peer-to-peer, one more? Yeah. Okay.
Can you hear? Yes, it's on. So I'm just going to help facilitate these extraordinary teens sharing with us. I've had the honor to spend some time with them, and they make me cry because I have my own trauma when I'm exposed to other people's pain. That is really hard on me, and it's actually what started Breaking Barriers, so I so appreciate you being open enough to share that with us, because it makes a difference in ways you do understand, and I think in just extraordinary ways that will be played out in your incredible careers. So we wanted to start just by saying, Nghia, can you talk about, I know both of you have been working on it, peer-to-peer programs, and why you feel so strongly about them and how they work?
Yes.
Are you on?
Am I on? Yeah, I'm on. Okay. So I think when we talk about peer-to-peer program, the foundational structure of receiving support and care is trust. So how do you build trust? You build a space and a place where friends who share similar experiences and commonality so that they can come together, so that they can have a space where they can talk about their struggles, right? And then that's where you create a space, for them to talk about their issues. And through this bonding, that's how you build intimacy and trust. Before you talk to anyone about intimate issues, you have to trust that person first, right? And I think that ties into, so if this occurs in high school, then, like the commonality between experiences and hardships, navigating the teenage experiences, right? So relationship issues. Your dad didn't make you pizza last night. Like your teacher gave you an F, whatever it is. So that's to share, commonality that teens face, and they bond with each other through that, right? Or like whatever viral video on TikTok that you saw the other day, cat jump and then they fail, whatever it is. So I think a great example for this is teenage therapy. So teenage therapy is a very popular podcast for young people currently. They're on Spotify. And they seek to talk about young people and youth experiences in a very first-person perspective. It's like, okay, so today I just faced a breakup. I felt these emotions, right? And I don't know what to do with it. Or today I just have an F. I've been working really, really, really hard, practicing for 4 hours, but I still don't understand why that happened. So I think the reason why it is so successful is that they give detailed experiences with teens and how other teens can relate to it. So I think that's a really strong foundation, right? You need to have like a shared and common identity, which is team between teens, to be able to trust each other and provide support for each other that way.
Right, and adding on to Nghia, the efficiency of peer-to-peer comes from youth understanding what it's like to grow up in an era of social media, the pandemic, and other new developments. And these are developments that make it more likely for youth to turn to other youth for help and support. I do want to mention that as youth, especially in high school, we're almost half of the age of most mental health professionals located at that school. And I don't have to tell you, high school today is wildly different than what it was like all those years ago. And I say that because youth understand these new developments more and understand the feelings firsthand of what it's like and can relate to what other youth are telling them. Even just like in the last few years, over let's say the last 4 years, 2018 was so different than now. And we didn't have the pandemic then. And the pandemic brought on so many feelings of anxiety and loneliness, and that severely affects our brain health, as we heard on day one about the neurobiology. And the new forums like TikTok have also brought up feelings. The algorithm prefers certain populations, which affects youth mental health because that's the content that you're consuming. And so when we talk about youth helping other youth, we want to emphasize that youth are capable enough to do it because we understand our peers. And we've been forced to grow up a lot quicker now than before. And that's what makes peer-to-peer effective, because youth can do it. Youth can be their own agents and their own counselors.
No, yeah, I agree with Sriya. So if you look into the research around peer-to-peer programs, you can see that youth are more likely to talk to other youth compared to adult teachers and counselors. So recently, the ACLU and their Youth Liberty Squad conducted a survey on surrounding the question, who are you most likely to turn to help when you face challenges? The overwhelming response is, I'm not turning to anyone for help. The second one is, I'm going to talk to my friends. And then parents, teachers, and counselor is like all the way at the bottom. So that proves the point, right? There's this really, really good quote from Helen. She's from Southern California. She said, peer-to-peer programs are a great resource for young people, especially for those who feel scared to approach an adult for help. For many of us, there's a barrier that can be felt between us and someone from a different generation.
Yeah, and adding on, peer-to-peer is a great resource for those that can't afford traditional therapy. So traditional therapy, we know, is very expensive. And also, a lot of my friends who want to access therapy have parents that have a cultural stigma where they don't believe mental health is as big of an issue, which also is a generational stigma. And that prevents them from accessing the care that they need. Even when you get past those barriers, those who are able to attend and go to traditional therapy, how often are you meeting your therapist? I mean, probably like once a week. And would that really be useful? I mean, once a week versus a peer-to-peer program directly on your campus where you're meeting peers every day. They're always accessible at school. Peer-to-peer exists directly on the campus too, so there's no barrier to getting there physically, and that's what makes it an equitable solution, and that's what we should be thinking about right now.
Yeah, I totally on point with this. So when we talk about depression in the US, it seems like in the 21st century, it seems like isolation is the new norm, right? And let's say in poorer countries, right? Even though they're much, much poorer, they had like a very strong, happy life, but like, big community, big family that you can always rely on whenever you need help. And in the US right now, we're just really funny. We're creating an artificial community through community schools, right? And like, other platforms to promote a community feels, to help, with mental health and mental issues. So, and then I think the best way to engage a student population within a school is that you would have like, youth at the center, right? To be able to like talk to other people, and not just adults, but talk to other people, so to create like a stronger foundation of care, and change the world that way. And then thus, as you know, there's a huge mental health shortage of mental health professionals in the field, not just in California, but like all across the nation. So we talk about all these fundings worth like $10 billion, community school initiative, youth behavioral health initiative, expanded learning opportunity funds. All that is wonderful. But if you use all that money to hire school therapists, school psychologists, social workers, there's not enough of them for you to hire. So one of the way that peer-to-peer programs can help is that they seek to create a very strong foundation of workforce development directly on schools. What does that mean? That means that, for example, let's say peers who become peer agents directly on school campuses are now being exposed to like, what does it mean to empathize with others people? What does it mean to provide help and services to other folks, with their similar age? And then let's say when they go to college, they take intro to psych or, other classes along that line. And then, hey, like I really like this, right? So how can I become, like a school psychologist or like a social worker? Like that I'm working within my schools back in like, let's say 1 or 2 years ago, right? So I think it sets a very strong and important foundation to be able to like alleviate the workforce shortage that's happening in California and all across the nation. And then having peer-to-peer programs in high school helps to address the needs of Tier 1 and 2 in the MTSS model, right? So let's say when you need help, you would come to your peers to talk about your experiences, right? It makes you feel better, it makes you feel heard. And then, so whenever students are facing distress, they're not shy away from accessing care and receiving support. And then whenever there's crisis going on, let's say there's evidence of abuse, or there are signs of suicidal ideation, then the peer counselors, the peer agents would walk the students to the appropriate professional help, to the school psychologists or social workers, to ensure that there's a very strong and a stronger foundation of care directly on school campus. Yeah.
Thank you. And this actually came up yesterday with Alicia Lieberman's work, and she was saying, it just stuck with me. You don't have to be a therapist to be therapeutic. I don't think I'll ever forget that sentence. There are certain sentences that stick with me, and that will be one of them. And it made me think directly about your peer-to-peer discussions and efforts and interests, and realizing that because you don't have to be a therapist to be therapeutic, and you can be the most therapeutic person in someone's life if they relate to you, right? So you mentioned some of the funding that the state, and we've talked a lot about the various funding that the state is pushing out right now, billions of dollars. So do you think that this is a good use of that funding?
I totally do. I think that when we talk about peer-to-peer, so in a traditional peer-to-peer program like on school campuses, right, it's mostly high school volunteers who volunteers to help other peers, right? So it's incredibly cheap and efficient for that one use of funding. So one popular example from the national level, it's called Sources of Strength. And what it does is that it seeks to promote the strengths, to empower youth. And so things like protective barriers, building confidence, building mental wellness, directly on school campus. And they would, have a very trusted adult that, oversees and run the program, and support and provide support for any peer agents that needed help. So it costs around $3,500 to have the model exist in your school, and $5,000 if you want to have train the trainer model, where you have Sources of Strength trainer to come to your school and being able to train your school staff or any higher CBOs that you're working with, right? So it's incredibly cheap. And now picture it with seniors, junior and seniors, before they leave high school. They would likely, we would ensure that it has a strong culture of a cycle continues on, right? So before junior and seniors they leave, they would recruit and transfer the knowledge to the next generation of sophomores and freshmen. Thus the cycle continues on, right? And the adult that oversees the program will ensure that that happens. So I think it's an incredible investment for a one-time funding that's happening currently.
I also want to add that peer-to-peer, at its heart, is a prevention-based program. Students can come in for even what they see as a minor problem, just to talk it out. And since most mental health issues don't develop at full severity at the high school age, what peer-to-peer is doing is giving youth the healthy coping mechanisms they need to tackle their minor obstacles, which would, if without the intervention of peer-to-peer, snowball into full severe mental illness. And so what we're doing with peer-to-peer is that we're not chasing the problem after the fact, we're preventing it from ever existing and ever being a problem, so that people, when they transition out of high school and go on to live their adult lives, have the resources they need to live a healthy life and take care of their well-being. Developing more prevention-based programs, I think, is our responsibility in order to set up the next generation with the mental health resources that they need to succeed in school and in their personal lives. Also, sorry, I feel like we lobbied you a lot in the last 10 minutes, but
Yes. That's right. Effectively.
That's not lobbying, that's saying what you think we should be doing. Which is
Advocating.
actually, as I told you before, probably the most important part of this entire convening, is you telling us, we're here to serve youth. And so you telling us what you think would be effective in that is maybe the most critical component, so. So feel free to lobby. Okay, I know you have both done a lot of research about this, and your thoughts on what would be effective prevention and intervention for mental health. So what is do you know of an effective example of peer-to-peer that you've found that you'd want to like describe or talk about?
Yeah, so we touched briefly on sources of strength, right? I think one of the biggest limitation that school faces when we talk about peer-to-peer program is that it faced liability issues. But guess what? Youth already has been doing this for like 10,000 years. They do not need the school approval to ensure that they're doing peer-to-peer and talking to their kids, right? So what's happening is that how can the school create a stronger example and a stronger culture where it's safe to access care, a safer and more efficient way of accessing care directly on school campuses. So the school needs to be directly involved to support the youth, not create a boundary and a barrier between them and the care that they are receiving. So I love that idea, right? And we talk about how sources of strength, the way that they seek to limit liability issues is that they focus on the strengths of it, right? Protective barriers that we're talking about, right? Building confidence, building relationships. Whereas traditional like suicide prevention programs, they seek to like go into like really, really heavy topics. So things like what are suicide, like signs? What does suicide ideation means? And all that stuff, which can be incredibly heavy topic for young adults and for teachers. That's why I think it faced a ton of challenges when expanding in schools. So that's why I think a program that seeks to eliminate that component of liability aspects works really, really well.
Greetings, everybody. My name is Taryn Musback. I am the climate coach for Del Norte County Unified School District up here in Crescent City, California. We are as far north as you can go before you are in the state of Oregon. I'm sorry I can't be there today. I'm also glad I can't be there today because in my role as the climate coach, one thing I do is train students and staff in the Sources of Strength program, which is what I'm going to talk to you about today. And that's what I'm doing today and why I'm here through video. So thank you for sharing your time with me. A little bit quickly about my background. Before this position, I was a high school teacher in both Wyoming and in Arizona. And during that time, I really saw the need to support youth with mental health. So that's what brought me to California. That's what brought me to Del Norte County. In this particular county, we definitely have a very high poverty rate. We have high rates of domestic violence, of substance abuse, high ACEs scores, and a tremendous amount of historical trauma that you're probably aware of. So all of that to say, a program like Sources of Strength is very needed here. Sources of Strength is a suicide prevention program, and it really is a prevention program. It's about increasing resiliency. It's not toxic positivity where we're like, oh, everything will be great, right? Instead, it's a program that says, hey, sometimes being a human is hard and we've all got to be human together, and it's a lot easier when we do it together. Sources of Strength really focuses on these 8 protective factors that are behind me. And these are the 8 protective factors that you say, hey, when I'm struggling, this is what gets me through. So the program design itself, you have a trainer. In our county, it's me. I train adult advisors, that would be the staff at our schools. And then I train peer leaders. Usually I train them all in the same day. And then I step back and those adult advisors and peer leaders work together throughout the school year to teach campaigns to their entire student body. So this entire design is based on social networking theory. That's the reason I'm involved in this, and that's the reason anybody involved in the program is involved in it, because at the core of social network theory, the belief is, if I trust you and you tell me I should do something, I'm going to, because I trust you, I'm connected to you. And that really is the heart of the program. So as a district level support, one of my peers, her name is Kelly, trained me. I asked Kelly, what can I do? How can I support you? And she said, expand this district wide, because what it's done for me as a teacher, and it's the language it's given me, I want to share that with all of my colleagues. So that's why I'm here on this video today, is because one of my peers trained me in the program and then encouraged me to continue. So I'm an adult advisor. Now I'm also a trainer, and then we also have the peer leaders, and this is still that same social network theory idea, but it's where the real power in the program comes in, because a peer leader gets trained, but then they recommend their friends into the program. And the other piece, an evidence-based piece that I'd like to share, and you can find this on the Sources website, but when one peer leader gets trained, they protect other friends up to the 4th degree. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that, and I've experienced this too. So I'm an adult advisor, and I do work with some students directly. And so I have a trained peer leader. That peer leader had a friend of a friend of a friend that was experiencing some suicidal ideation. This peer contacted me and told me about this friend way over here. So even though we know this through the evidence of Sources of Strength, but I personally experienced this, where a student I don't know to the 4th degree gets protected by this student that knows me and that has a relationship with what we call trusted adults in the program, or mentors. So again, that's the power of the program. It's that peer protection and that peer connectedness. And that's also what transforms the culture of a school. Now, we're still doing the work here. So I'd love to tell you that the work's done, but it's not. The work just started. But the work is magic because of that peer-to-peer-to-peer. This isn't a top-down program. This is a grassroots level program where if you have one staff member that will support it and that will work with students, that's all you need. And you really only need 1 or 2 students to get it going. But this is something that students gravitate to. And once everybody's trained, any meeting goes in this order. You do 1 part fun, 1 part story share, and then 1 part planning. How are we going to get those messages and that communication out there? That's really where that culture change starts as well, is the peer leaders get together and they say, I'll use an example from Del Norte High School that we did recently. They say, what helps you with anger, anxiety, or sadness? So the peer leaders wanted to have their student body do a Google survey. And so that's what you're looking at right here. We had 186 responses. And our question was, when you feel stressed, what emotion comes up for you? So the peer leaders tell us that this is what they want to do. And then the adult advisors, we go and build it and do the logistical portions. So the next part of the survey that they wanted to ask is, okay, what helps you when you feel this way, which is the point of the campaign. And you can see we had them select all that are true for them. And then we just listed the 8 protective factors that Sources of Strength uses. And you can see them down the side. And this data really lets us know, right? We brought it back to the peer leaders and they looked at the data and they were like, uh-oh, mentors is an issue. And so next month, we're going to move into mentors and trusted adults and how they can help us. So this is a word cloud. We had a question that said, what's one specific activity that helps you manage? And you can see music was really big. You might see some words that are kind of negative in there, and that's just because the word cloud used every single word that was there. So I just want to highlight, these are some random student comments that they gave to me. Let me read this one down here. Don't try and do it by yourself. Ask for help. This one over here says, talking about your emotions can be hard for some people, but it's always good to talk or speak up. There's always someone who will listen to you and who will help you out. So that's just a little bit of student voice, but this is, again, the power and impact of the program is the peer leader said, this is what you should do. This is how we want to do it. The adult advisors go and build it, and then the peer leaders go back and teach it. And it's that peer-to-peer-to-peer experience that really brings that resilient language back into how we interact with each other. It also increases all of our connectedness, which we know is fundamental to our sense of well-being. I am absolutely in support of expanding sources of strength throughout the state of California. If we want to see resilient young people and resilient adults, this is the direction that we want to go in for strong, resilient staff and students. Thanks all for your time.
So the whole convening has been about, how do we holistically support youth and children and their families, and how do we build a system that does that? And we framed the convening around a family, a very complex family, the Maxwell family. So I'm just curious, do you have thoughts on how this would help the Maxwell family?
Yeah, we have a lot of thoughts. So, Jordan Maxwell, just a quick background, is a 17-year-old cisgender lesbian female of Black and Hispanic heritage. She was in foster care at a young age and suffered physical abuse also at a young age. So imagine Jordan suddenly feels overwhelmed, and that's not too hard to imagine because she's balancing her school, work, and caretaker responsibilities. She doesn't feel comfortable talking to her parents because of their negative attitudes towards mental health. But let's say Jordan suddenly has an overwhelming feeling gnawing at her in the middle of math class. She's unable to pay attention to her teacher's lecture about fractions. They're not learning fractions in high school, but calculus.
I love it.
She's unable to do her homework, her classwork. She just needs a break. And we heard from Goldie yesterday how important a brain break is. So Jordan takes a break from her class and she walks over to a room designated on campus where peer agents are sitting around on little couches and are there to talk through what Jordan wants to talk through and whatever is bugging her at that time. These peer agents have undergone rigorous training, like I mentioned, in conflict mediation and crisis intervention. So Jordan is able to talk freely about what she's going through while the peer agents are actively listening and adding well-deserved affirmations about how Jordan is handling her situation and being so strong for asking for help at this time. This is the first time that Jordan has been able to take a break and felt listened to, the first time in this day. She can finally breathe, and her peer agents supplement the conversation with coping mechanisms that she can continue to use as she exits the peer room. And if there's an immediate crisis, the peer agents, like Nghia said before, can walk Jordan down to the school psychologist's office, and she can take over and get Jordan the necessary resources that she requires. This is what we imagine when we say peer-to-peer, and it's not too difficult to imagine. I think it's something that should exist. It seems so self-explanatory that it exists already, but we need to make sure that it does actually happen on high school campuses across California. All high schoolers need access to this kind of care because this is what's happening in schools right now, but right now they're forced to sit in those classrooms and continue that work.
So you mentioned this a little bit, and these two are maybe two of the most informed youth I have met on these issues. So I really look forward to watching you at UCLA and Stanford and seeing what you do. I can see them transformed, these universities. But one of the things that we talk a lot about is funding for different bodies of work and strategies to support you all. So have you done any research on how this might get funded in the system?
Yeah, so we touched briefly about this, right? So community school is a $3 billion investment, and it seeks to promote a whole center, child well-being. What does that mean? In the lens of peer-to-peer program, that means that not just like stronger connections and relationship with school staff and adults and teachers, but also a very strong foundational support of their peers directly on campus, right? And community school has every reason to make peer-to-peer program one of their central models. For Youth Behavioral Health Initiative, this fully supports the vision behind a stronger, a more resilient student population on campus. And that's a $4.4 billion funding. Expanded Learning Opportunity Funds, ELL funding, for after-school programs. We can make peer-to-peer whatever we'd like, right? Whether it's after-school program, whether it's during school program. So there's just so many funds out there to make peer-to-peer program and turn it into a reality. MHSA funding as well. Where's Toby? Can also fund peer-to-peer program.
He's staring at you, Toby, sorry.
And we're working with the California Citizens Trust to release a maybe like one paragraph under each of the funding to explain how this can potentially fund peer-to-peer program. We're seeking to send it over to Breaking Barriers like as resources post-conference. So look forward to that.
So we're aware of some of the limitations of peer-to-peer, some of the barriers, if you will, and we know how to break them, which is why we're all here, right? Breaking barriers.
Way to bring it back.
So we know that districts are so overwhelmed right now. I mean, there are so many changes, and there's a lot that is being asked of them, and there seem a never-ending supply of crises that they're required to solve. So we understand that feeling of being overwhelmed. But there are two things that we would like districts to know, and that's that these fundings that we've talked about these past 2 days are one-time fundings. And if you miss it, there's probably not another chance until maybe a couple years down the line. The other thing we want you guys to know is that there are CBOs out there who can assist with signing up with the application and the administration of rolling out these programs. And we will work with Breaking Barriers in the next couple of months to help roll out these programs if you are interested and if you are wanting to do this at your own schools. We can work collaboratively and offer our knowledge as well and make this happen. I do want to say we can imagine a world where every youth, including Jordan, has access to mental health care directly on their campus.
I'd like to say, now let's stop imagining, but turn it into reality.
And I also wanted to plug some of the ways that we're doing that. We talked today to a couple of people about our youth coalition that we're building. Our idea for that is that we're going to unite, and we have united, some of the most influential and prominent mental health organizations in California with youth at the center, which means that youth advocates and advisory boards from each of these amazing organizations are going to come and sit at the table together. We're going to talk about some of the issues that are affecting youth in their mental health, and obviously youth know these issues firsthand. And we're going to come up with a solution, because these solutions are ultimately going to be serving youth. And so why shouldn't youth be the ones that initiate it? We have brought together, Nghia, do you want to say? We've brought together a couple of organizations already, and we're working on expanding. And we want to welcome any other youth organization that would be interested in this coalition, and also in developing solutions for the next generation.
So some of the organizations that gave us a green light so far is Cayenne. Cayenne is very central in the Youth Behavioral Health Initiative and rolling it out, offering youth perspective. NAMI. NAMI is also another one that gave us a green light. Their policy person, Danny Offer, is working with us on this. There's also California Coalition for Youth for Obvious Reasons, where Sriya is working at, where I'm also working at.
Yeah, both of us.
And we're inviting CYC to the table as well, foster youth and underprivileged kids, right? And all the other players, because we want to make sure that whatever youth has to offer will be heard. And the goal is that we would come together and find an initiative that we're all passionate about and all believe in, whether it's peer-to-peer, whether it's other forms of mental health care in schools, and work collaboratively together to make it a reality.